For a setting where nothing changes, there sure are quite a bit of changes coming to Warhammer this year, and who better to talk about that than I, Angron's calmest son, his third strongest son, Connor K 40K. So, let's knock it off right now. Let's get the bat ready and let's swing for a home run. I want to talk about the new Dawn of Fire book that's going to get released soon, the Silent King by Guy Haley. I think that's going to be very interesting because I would like to believe there's a lot of different ways this can go down. So, number one, and this is the video is more or less going to be what I think I'd like to see in Warhammer and, in 2025. So, starting off with, the new Dawn of Fire novel, what I would like to see with the Silent King, there's probably going to be at least 3 ways I think realistically this can go down that I'd be happy seeing either way. Number one would be the meeting. So I don't think it would be wise, or I don't know how you would efficiently write it in a way that people won't get disappointed, is that you can't have Gilliman directly confront the Silent King in battle, because even if the Emperor were to use Gilliman as a vessel like he did in Godblight, it would not work, I don't think, in a literary sense, or even just from an entertainment perspective. It wouldn't work, right? It wouldn't be fun, and on paper, the Silent King should absolutely demolish 99.9% of the named characters. The dude is an ancient, leader of an ancient civilization who has access to some technology that is, like, bombastically insane even for 40K standards. There's no shot that he should win. And I'm no power scaler, but I do tend to dabble in the irrational arts of power scaling. There's just no shot this should happen. So what I think should happen, if there's any sort of battle, it should be sort of covert attacking supply lines and secrets being employed, something of that nature. But there should be a meeting, is how I think the first part of this would go down, where they're discussing the greater implications and threats of the setting, i.e. chaos, or the Tyranids, which I think this is how it's most likely going to go down, with some either demonic incursion or the Tyranids kind of interrupting this meeting, is how I think it'll go down. Number 2 of how this whole possible book could go down is that he gets interrupted by said Tyranids and then Silent King comes by, or something like that, right? That's how I think it's really going to be one of those 2 things. I think it's most likely going to occur. I really don't want to see a battle, which is weird for me to say as a World Eater fan, because I love when shit goes insane and I get to see everybody fight. But in this particular instance, I don't think it would work out that well. So, number 2, Fulgrim's returning. Really cool stuff. I've never been the biggest Emperor's Children fan. However, the more I read about them, the more I think they're kind of cool. And now Fulgrim's returning, and this can be speculatory in a lot of ways. This can lead to a lot of different things. Here's how I would like it to go down. I don't want this to be indicative of another Chaos versus Imperium thing. That sort of, not that it's played out, but it is, because of course, I think as of right now, when it comes to who's the biggest, evil, worst faction right now, who's propped up to be the main bad guy, I would say it's always a tie between, the Tyranids and Chaos, but right now I would argue that Chaos will always be the overarching enemy for everybody. But that doesn't necessarily mean I want to see Fulgrim engage in another Primarch and Primarch conflict. I'm getting a little bit tired of those. Listen, I like Primarchs as much as the next guy. But what I'd like to see is Fulgrim sort of engage with the other Chaos Primarchs. I think we've been lacking in this sort of Chaos versus Chaos Giga-like war, if you understand what I'm saying, right? So let me try, if people are lost, let me try to re-explain it in a way that doesn't sound completely and utterly foolish. If you've read a Chaos book in general, usually it's either these 3 things. It's an AdMech / Eldar focused, they're antagonists. And of course, if the Eldar and or the AdMech are involved, they're losing. They're always losing, even in their own books. They're going to get viciously beaten down to a pulp, and they're going to say thank you, because that's what they deserve. If you're an Eldar fan, this should be nothing new to you, because you guys always deserve to lose. My bad. That came from a place of, that was an emotional moment for me. I apologize. But you get what I'm saying, though. So, but then there's also the third option, or the second option, which would be the Loyalists versus Chaos. And then the third option, which I think is honestly the least explored, is Chaos versus Chaos, right? These other war bands fighting. Because remember, The Chaos Gods are, battling it out in the Materium to always, win the great game, to lay more claim in the Immaterium. And of course, that's by proxy. They want to take control of the Materium as well and claim land there, demon world, so the veil is pierced and they can cross over way more easily. But chaos on chaos violence is much more interesting to me, much more compelling to me. To see Fulgrim engage with maybe, let's say, Mortarion or Perturabo even. We haven't seen a lot of Perturabo, so maybe it'd be really cool to get 2 Demon Primarchs introduced again. Because I think everyone's pretty clear and is pretty well in their thinking that they're kind of, GW, I would assume, is gearing up to keep reintroducing Primarchs again and bringing them back. And, how I feel about that, personally, I'm not the biggest fan, but I don't write the books and I don't work for GW. You can hire me if you want. It's safe to say I'm a little bit invested with all the books I have. But you get what I'm saying? Chaos versus Chaos War would be really interesting because it'd be a little bit of a refresher, and it could possibly bring up some stuff with the Arcs of Omen, storyline that was going on there with what Abaddon was doing with the Crusades. It could just be interesting for Chaos to, obviously, because Chaos is always self-defeating, it could be interesting to see this internal conflict and just have them battle it out. A Chaos battle isn't necessarily a high-stakes battle. Remember, none of them can permanently die unless they're killed by, let's say, the Emperor's Sword or another known demon, a true death. They're not going to be granted that. It's a very low-stakes battle. The Chaos Marines, sure, some of them will die. Demon Princes, sure, some of them will die. They'll probably come back, though. It's an interesting thing to think about. I don't want Fulgrim fighting Loyalists, and I'm just not sure, how I'd feel about any of that. I think it should be Chaos versus Chaos stuff. And finally, I think the last thing I would like to see in Warhammer this coming year, if they're going to keep reintroducing Primarchs, it's the thing that I would like to see for every faction, right? I would like to see some of the other factions kind of get their own, a little, I guess if you play video games, I'd like to say buff, right? For those of you who don't know, the Warp Spider's Phoenix Lord was sort of thrown back into the setting, introduced again, and I thought that was really cool. I'm not, obviously, when I shit on Eldar fans, that's not like an actual, I think you suck, everyone should enjoy their faction. But, that's a big win, but it was hardly really covered or talked about, which I thought was kind of insane because that's the equivalent of a Primarch returning, right? So I'd like to see some of the other factions kind of get their, their spot to shine, right? There's Sisters of Silence that I think people forget about. I do. No shame in that. I forget about them. There's, who else am I forgetting, really? The Leagues of Votann have had one book, I think, released about them, and I was really hyped for that, and then they just don't really do anything with these factions, if you get what I'm saying. I think more of them need to be highlighted, they need to be sort of just thrown out there, because it's really easy to just focus on the factions that sell money. Of course it is. Really? Do you think... Listen, you go with what's popular. I understand that. You don't need to be a business guy to know that stuff. But I would like to see all the factions kind of get their time to shine. It would be cool if the Sisters of Silence got all this stuff. It'd be cool if Leagues of Votann got their stuff. It would be cool if the Tyranids were kind of made more into a real threat. For me, because I feel like they're in this weird purgatory state where they're consistently considered a threat, but then they're jobbing. And it's ridiculous because they really shouldn't be jobbing. I know in the setting they're obviously really viable threats, and everyone who's anybody considers them threats. But then you have the Swarm Lord consistently getting murdered when really it really shouldn't be, and it's ridiculous. Personally, sorry, I'm gonna go on a rant because it's foolish. It's ridiculous. I'd like to see the Swarm Lord actually win more and more now. I know there was a poll where everyone was voting if the Tyranids should win or lose, and it was about an important hive world or whatever, and I think they devoured the hive world. But come on, there needs to be a little bit more urgency with the Tyranids. There needs to be more development. They should be the big bad. Hive Fleet Kronos should be more prevalent, should be devouring chaos, should be a considerable threat, and this should tie in to the Silent King. This should be, there. This should be something. Sorry. I know it's weird because I don't think people realize I used to, I'm a pretty huge Tyranid fan, and because I think they have an extreme amount of potential, like any faction, but nobody likes to talk about it because it's, if they're fulfilling their potential, then the setting's ending, and it's not going to end because 40K makes too much money. That's just the thing. And we saw how end times went, and, I'm not going to talk about Age of Sigmar and all that because I don't know enough about it. I'm not going to talk out of my ass about it. But I'll talk out of my ass about Tyranids because they're cool. They should be doing more. Yeah, in Warhammer 2025, Tyranids should be more of a threat. Yes. And you know what? Here's for the Eldar fans and for the AdMech fans, they should be way more powerful than they're portrayed in novels. The AdMech that has access to a crap load of STCs, and just Titans and Warhounds and Imperial Knights when they can conscribe them, and they consistently lose, and it's ridiculous. And then let's move on to Eldar fans. Yeah, as much as I clown on Eldar fans, it is kind of disgusting how whenever the Eldar are portrayed in literally anything, they still find a way to not look cool. And sure, there's some arguments you can make where it's like, oh, dude, it's really hard for an author to write these very intellectual creatures that have been alive for billions of years because we obviously can't put our shoes, we can't conceptualize how they think and move because if we make them how they're supposed to be, they're too competent for the setting. I don't give a shit. Like, make them cool, man. You can make them chatty. It's okay to have these spindly, agile creatures be superior for a book and have them actually be competent and not cryptic when they're warning people. That's another thing too. Maybe in Warhammer 2025 we can have the Farseers be a little less cryptic with their weird messages and be like, you're going to stub your toe on a random Tuesday. Maybe this Tuesday, I don't know. But then when you stub your toe on the Tuesday, they're like, I told you this would happen. That's bullshit, Eldrad. That's nonsense. Fix it. Sorry. Again, it's a bunch of nonsense. If you get what I'm saying, though, these are just some of the things I'd like to see. This kind of devolved into a rant. I don't regret it, though, because it's been on my mind. So, with that being said, I do want to hear about what you guys think should happen in Warhammer and in this year. What should happen, or honestly, what do you think shouldn't happen? Should they not reintroduce Primarch? Should Fulgrim fight Loyalists? Should the Silent King just, I don't know, go back into exile and pick up some in and out? I don't really know. You guys tell me. I'm interested in what you guys have to say. And of course, if you watched the whole video, thank you so much. And I will see you all later.